At my sister's bridal shower, I handed her a folder, venue deposit paid, custom dress credit, and a $4,500 check. She smirked and said, Still trying to buy love? Laughter. My mom whispered, Don't be sensitive, it's just her way. I took back the folder, smiled, and said, And this is mine. By morning, the boutique had cancelled her dress order, the planner requested new payment, and her fiancé angrily texted me. It was too rude. She said it right after I handed her the folder. There were about 20 people around us, her bridesmaids, a few friends from her yoga studio, some cousins, our mom. Everyone had just finished their tiny desserts, and someone had made a toast about sisterhood and love and loyalty. Perfect timing, right? The folder wasn't flashy. Just a plain navy one with no markings. I'd thought about wrapping it, or putting a bow on it, but that felt forced. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to give her something useful. Something that meant she wouldn't have to stress about the two biggest expenses, the venue and the dress. And the extra cash? That was just because I knew things always go over budget. She never asked, but I didn't think she needed to. She was my sister. So I handed it to her and just said, Here. She opened it slowly, like she already assumed it was going to be sentimental or boring. Then she saw the printouts. The dress credit confirmation. The venue receipt. The check. She blinked. Then she held the check up for everyone to see. She said loud enough for the room to go quiet. Still trying to buy love? Laughter. Not loud, more like giggles that people didn't want to have, but had anyway. One of her friends actually clapped. My face was burning. I remember looking at our mom. She gave me this quick, familiar look and whispered, Don't be sensitive, it's just her way. Just her way. Her way to call you out in front of people. Her way to twist something generous into something pathetic. Her way to act like I was the weird one for caring too much. I took the folder back without saying anything more than, And this is mine. And I walked out. No drama. No raised voice. Just gone. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the folder on my kitchen table. I hadn't cried. I hadn't gotten angry. But something in me had flipped. Like someone finally hit a switch I didn't even know existed. I made 3 calls. First, the venue. The contract was under my name. I told them to release the date. No refund needed. Second, the boutique. The credit was cancelled. Her dress was taken off hold. Third, I tore the check up, then burned the pieces over my sink, watching each curl into ash. By the time I woke up the next morning, I had 10 missed calls. My sister left 4 voicemails. 2 crying, 1 yelling, and 1 that just said, Unreal. Then her fiancé texted me. You're sabotaging her big day. Don't insert yourself into something you were never part of. That made me laugh. All I'd ever done was insert myself. Quietly. Helped them move. Lent them money. Covered for her lies. Watched my parents bend over backward for her, even when she ghosted Thanksgiving 3 years in a row. I didn't respond to the text. Or the calls. She had 3 weeks to figure it out. The venue quoted her $7,000. The dress? Gone. The planner refused to continue until she was paid in full. They were out nearly $12,000, just to get back to where they thought they were when I showed up at that shower. And my parents? They covered it. Complained the whole time, but paid it. Then, like nothing had happened, my mom left a message that said, You're still invited to the wedding if you want to come. It's up to you. We'd like you there. That was the moment I knew they really didn't get it. I was going. Of course I was. Not to celebrate. But to finish what I started. I knew I wasn't wanted there. That was clear from the moment I walked into the venue. No greeting. No eye contact. Just a couple of awkward glances from distant cousins who hadn't seen me in years. I wasn't even on the seating chart, not officially. My name wasn't on any place card, and the coordinator looked at me like I'd wandered into the wrong event. I found a random seat at the edge of the room, near the speakers and close enough to the bar to avoid conversation. I didn't plan on staying long, but I wasn't leaving without saying what I came to say. The ceremony was exactly what you expect from 2 people who had spent more time posing for Instagram than actually working on their relationship. She read vows that sounded like Pinterest quotes. He called her his ride or die. which got a laugh from the younger guests and a confused look from our great-aunt Patricia. They kissed, everyone clapped, and I watched it all like someone watching a stranger's dream. The reception was even worse. I was tucked at a table with 3 of Jared's coworkers, one of whom leaned over at one point and asked, "So, how do you know the groom?" I just smiled and said, "I don't really." That shut it down. When the music started and the drinks began flowing, I got up to walk around. My parents pretended not to see me. My mom was laughing loudly, probably louder than she needed to, and my dad was talking to some vendor about how flawless the day turned out despite a few last-minute hiccups. I almost laughed. Eventually, the lights dimmed and someone tapped a glass to start the speeches. Brielle's maid of honor went first. She made a joke about the 2 of them stealing vodka from their dorm fridge and swore they were sisters in another life. Then came the best man, who mostly talked about how Jared used to be a player until Brielle tamed him. Not exactly romantic, but no one seemed to care. Then my dad stood up. That got the room quiet. He thanked everyone for coming, praised Brielle and Jared for building a future rooted in love, and even mentioned how proud he was to see them overcome so many challenges together. He didn't look in my direction once. Not when he talked about family, not when he thanked those who had gone above and beyond. It was calculated, deliberate. They wanted to erase me quietly. Then the DJ said it, the sentence I had been waiting for. "If anyone else would like to say a few words, the mic is open." I stood. You could feel the shift. A few people turned in their seats. A couple of murmurs. My mom froze mid-sit. My dad clenched his jaw. Brielle stared straight ahead, pretending she didn't see me walking toward the microphone. I took it and smiled. "Hi everyone. I'll keep this short. I'm David, Brielle's older brother." There were nods. Some polite, some hesitant. "I just wanted to say, this day looks incredible. The venue, the dress, the food, the setup, truly beautiful. And none of it would have happened without someone stepping up a few weeks ago when everything nearly collapsed." Now heads started turning. Jared's face shifted. Brielle was still staring at her champagne. I offered to help. Quietly. I paid for the venue deposit. I secured a dress credit. I gave money, not to be thanked, just to help. I handed it all to Brielle in a folder at her shower. Pause. She held it up and said, "Still trying to buy love?" And laughed. Dead silence. That was the moment I realized I'd spent most of my life trying to be useful to people who only saw me as a backup plan. So I took it all back. Every cent. I let them handle it themselves. And from what I hear, that cost about $12,000. Now some guests were whispering. A couple of people looked at my parents. I'm not bitter. I'm free. I'm done pretending I'm okay with being laughed at and then asked to foot the bill. I won't stay silent anymore. That ends today. I nodded once, handed the mic back to the DJ, and walked straight out through the side exit. One person clapped. My grandfather. It echoed across the stunned room like a cough in a church. My grandmother nudged him gently and shook her head. He stopped, but he didn't look embarrassed. He looked proud. Outside, I didn't even wait for my coat. I just walked across the gravel lot, got in my car, and drove home. No one followed. 2 days later, they showed up at my door. My dad spoke first. "You embarrassed your sister. You embarrassed this family." He didn't even bother to ask why. He told me they talked it over, and if this was how I wanted to act, like some attention-hungry kid throwing a tantrum, I was out of the family business. Just like that. Cut off. I said, "All right." No questions. No argument. That response shook him more than anything I could have yelled. Here's part 3 of David's story. Part 3, the cut. After they left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time doing nothing. Just staring at the same spot on the wall. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I felt still. Like something heavy had finally been lifted, even if it left a hollow behind. Being cut out of the family business should have felt like a death sentence. My dad always used it like a weapon. "You're next in line," he used to say, as if it were a crown I should be grateful for. But it never came with power. Only expectations. Quiet obedience. Show up, shut up, and be useful. I started getting calls almost immediately. One of the senior guys from the company, Alan, Left a voicemail saying he was shocked and hoped it wasn't true. He'd worked under my dad for 27 years and told me more than once he thought I was the only one with the sense to modernize things. Then my Uncle Frank called. Left no message. Just hung up. Even my cousin Shelby texted. Whatever you said at the wedding, it needed to be said. I hadn't planned it that way. I didn't go there to set fire to everything. But once I saw their faces, heard those speeches, watched them pass me over like I was a distant relative crashing the buffet, it all just came out. Clean and sharp. A week went by. 2. I didn't reach out. I didn't show up to the office. Then one morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was one of the firm's longtime investors, someone who knew my grandfather, who still had a silent stake in the company even though he hadn't touched a spreadsheet in years. He asked if we could meet. We did, at a diner downtown. No suits. No papers. Just coffee and direct questions. I heard you're out, he said. Seems that way. Your dad's been pushing deals we didn't approve. Cutting old agreements. Taking risks that feel more like moves to prove he's still in charge than good business. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. I've known your family a long time, he continued. I remember you running around that office in sneakers. You've got something they don't. You listen. He told me he and 2 others were planning a vote to restructure the board. There'd be resistance, sure. But if I was willing to step in, not emotionally, but strategically, there was a real chance we could shift things. Not just get me back in. Put me in charge. It wasn't revenge that made me say yes. It was clarity. For the first time, I could see a version of my life where I wasn't orbiting around my family, waiting for their approval. I didn't want to destroy them. I just didn't want to need them anymore. I started slow. Showed up to meetings. Quietly gathered numbers. Asked questions in front of people who weren't used to being questioned. The resistance was immediate. My dad pretended not to notice me at first, like I was just another vendor in the room. Then he got cold. Dismissive. Sarcastic. But I didn't bite. I let him talk. I let him perform. And I let the others see. I wasn't planning revenge. I was laying a foundation. Because part of me knew, when it finally snapped, it wouldn't be me raising my voice. It would be him. And when that happened, I'd already have the leverage. 3 weeks into my quiet return, I got a call I didn't expect. It was from Jared. I let it ring the first time. And the second. On the third call, I picked up mostly out of curiosity. He started by saying, "Look, I'm not calling to fight." I said nothing. He continued, "Brielle's been spiraling. She's convinced you're trying to ruin her life." I almost laughed. He paused, like he was deciding whether to keep going. Then he said it. She got fired from her job. That I didn't know. Apparently, she'd used her company's card to pay off part of the wedding venue bill, figuring she'd reimburse it before anyone noticed. Someone noticed. It wasn't her first warning. They let her go, quietly. And now she thinks you told them. He added. I didn't even know. I said. Well, she's unraveling. I didn't care as much as I thought I would. I told him that if she needed someone to blame, she should look at the mirror, not at me. He didn't argue. Just thanked me for picking up and hung up. I didn't tell anyone about the call. Not even when I met again with the investors 2 days later. We had numbers on our side. 3 board members were prepared to vote on removing my dad as CEO, citing mismanagement and conflict of interest. They asked if I was ready to step in, not as a figurehead, but with full authority. I said yes. What I didn't know then was that someone had been feeding my dad information. A leak. I found out the next morning, at 6:47 a.m., when my mom showed up at my door. No call. Just her, standing there in her trench coat, holding a coffee I didn't ask for. I know what you're doing, she said. I know about the vote. I let her in, mostly because I didn't want the neighbors seeing her arguing on my porch. You're going to tear everything apart just to prove a point, she said. No, I told her. I'm going to fix what he's been breaking for years. He's your father. And I was his son, I said. Didn't stop him from cutting me out the second it made him feel powerful. She didn't argue with that. Just sat at my kitchen counter like she owned the place. Then she dropped the second surprise. He had a stroke. Yesterday. Minor but real. He didn't want you to know. For a second, I didn't know what to feel. It didn't even register properly. Like my body heard the words but refused to react. I asked if he was in the hospital. He's at home. The board can't find out, she said. That's when I realized she wasn't here as my mother. She was here as his proxy. She wanted me to delay the vote. Give them time to cover it, spin it, by sympathy. You want me to protect him? I said. Yes. I looked at her. For a second, I thought about the way she used to pack me school lunches, how she'd sit at my bed when I had fevers. Then I remembered her whispering at the bridal shower. Don't be sensitive, it's just her way. I made my decision then. The vote happens as planned, I said. If he's too weak to face it, then he shouldn't be in charge. She stood, dropped the coffee on the counter, and walked out without another word. She didn't slam the door. She didn't have to. That afternoon, my phone rang again. It was my grandfather. Do it, he said. Whatever you're planning, finish it. The vote wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No last-minute speeches. Just hands raised, eyes steady, silence between names. 3 in favor. 2 against. My father was officially removed as CEO. The chair nodded toward me before announcing. Effective immediately, David will serve as interim CEO. And just like that, the room moved on. Everyone started talking about operational changes, new priorities, scheduling a staff announcement. I sat still for a moment, watching how easily the machine kept turning without him. That was the first real surprise, how little resistance there was. How many people were already ready for this. At 4:17 p.m., my father walked in. No knock. He didn't ask. Just barged into the executive wing like nothing had changed. The receptionist looked frozen. The assistant manager looked away. He found me in his old office, sitting at what used to be his desk. The same desk I used to clean up for him when he left coffee rings and scattered papers everywhere. He didn't sit. He just stared at me. You smug little bastard, he said. I didn't react. You think this is over? You think you've won? No, I said. I think I just stopped losing. He laughed, short, bitter, ugly. This company runs on my name. Not anymore. You ungrateful little, I gave you everything. No, I said calmly. You dangled everything and called it love. His mouth tightened. Then, something unexpected happened. He wobbled slightly. I stood, ready to catch him if he collapsed. But he waved me off, sat in a guest chair like the air had left his body. This company will eat you alive, he muttered. It always does. Then at least I'll know what I'm being eaten for. He looked around the room, like maybe he thought someone would stop this, call it all a joke, restore order. But there was no one. Just us. You're not like me, he said. I know. I let the silence hang. Then I opened the drawer and slid over the legal folder, full documentation of the board's vote, terms of his removal, revocation of access, even the courtesy clause allowing him to keep his pension. He stared at it for a long time. Then stood, slowly, and walked out. That night, I got a call from Bridal. No hello. No pause. Just immediate venom. You think this is funny? What you did to Dad? You think humiliating him makes you strong? I said nothing. He's embarrassed. He can't even look our grandfather in the eye. Do you know what you've done? I stopped playing the part, I said. Oh, right, she snapped. You're the victim. Poor David. Always giving, never appreciated. I gave until I bled, I said. And when I stopped, you called it war. She went quiet. Then she said something that made my blood chill. I'm going to destroy you. You already tried, I said. You just forgot I could fight back. She hung up. The next morning, our mother called. Just her voice this time. No visit. Just a single sentence. You should be ashamed. I hung up. But the real surprise came that afternoon. I got a letter, an actual paper letter, hand-delivered by one of the older staff. It was from my grandfather. All it said was, "You did what I never had the courage to do. Don't stop now. Keep the name, but change what it stands for." I kept that letter in the top drawer of the desk. That night, I stood by the office window, lights below like a grid of possibilities. I didn't feel proud. Or victorious. Just steady. And that was enough. In the weeks that followed, everything settled into a new rhythm. People started treating me differently. Not better, just differently. Like they weren't sure where the lines were anymore. Some tiptoed, others tested. I let them. I didn't need loyalty. I needed time. I kept my head down and cleaned house one piece at a time. Obsolete departments got merged. Redundant staff quietly reassigned. I reinstated old vendors who had been pushed out under shady terms. The company got leaner, sharper, more stable. And I kept every move legal, documented, and dull enough to avoid gossip. But Bridal didn't stop. She tried to stir sympathy online. Claimed I'd sabotaged the wedding. Spread stories about me being emotionally abusive as a brother, selfish, jealous. A few people believed her, mostly her circle of friends who'd always hated that I didn't treat her like royalty. But what she didn't know was that I had the receipts. Every invoice. Every email. Every transfer. I sent nothing to the public, nothing to the press. Just enough to our legal team to quietly warn her she was walking a tightrope. After that, she went silent. Our parents, though, were harder to read. They didn't come around. Not for meetings. Not for holidays. But they also didn't back Bridal the way I expected. Something had shifted between them, not just toward me, but toward her too. She'd become a liability. And I think, for the first time, they realized she didn't have an off switch. Not even for family. Then my father showed up again. Not at my place. At the office. He waited outside the building one Friday evening. I saw him as I stepped out. I thought he'd say something harsh. That he'd start again, try to claw something back. But all he said was, "Do you want to get a drink?" We sat in a bar 3 blocks away. He ordered whiskey. I didn't order anything. He didn't apologize. That wasn't his style. But he didn't threaten either. "You were right," he finally said. "You were just earlier than I was ready for." I said nothing. "I'm not going to fight you anymore," he added. "But I'm not going to pretend we're fine." "I don't need you to pretend," I said. "Just don't stand in my way." He nodded once. Finished his drink. Then left. The real ending came 3 weeks later. My grandfather died. Peacefully. In his sleep. My grandmother called me, voice calm but broken. I was the first person she called. The funeral was quiet, and the church was packed. Bridal showed up late. My mother clung to my father's arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And when they asked if anyone wanted to speak, I stood up. But I didn't talk about the business. Or my father. Or my sister. I talked about how my grandfather used to teach me to play chess, how he'd let me win until I was good enough to win on my own. I talked about the silence between moves, how he said silence was where you figured out who you really were. After the burial, my grandmother handed me a sealed envelope. It was his will. He'd shifted his shares. Quietly. Months ago. Everything passed to me. Every last share. The company was mine. Officially. Legally. Permanently. My father didn't say a word. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Bridal started crying and left before the last prayer. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. I just went back to the office the next morning, sat at the desk, and opened the windows wide. Let the silence in. Let the peace stay. And then I started building something new, from the ground they thought I'd never stand on. I don't know if there'll be more to tell after this. Maybe one day they'll come around. Maybe they won't. I've stopped waiting for apologies and started learning how to live without needing any. The story might end here, or maybe something unexpected will pull me back into it. Either way, for now, this is where I leave it. Thanks to everyone who stuck through the whole thing. ChatGPT. ChatGPT.